those accomplishments that you can see that you put on your resume are typically stories that you're going to want to use in your interview.
You're in the interview, right? And you're thinking about your personal brand. How does that affect your is there a certain approach or a certain type of cultivation that you have to do with your own personal brand before you do go into those interviews, or what kind of, I mean, because you're right. I mean, we're building this brand, but also I'm me. So I'm going to talk about what I did. So how does that how do you kind of turn that switch into making sure that you're in branding mode without sounding inauthentic?
hmm I think like the big part of it is just a lot of people don't know their accomplishments. And so when I go through the resume process with people, is we really talk about those accomplishments. I was interviewing someone today, and I was like, "So tell me about this job that you did." And she was like, "Oh, nothing really exciting happened there." And so I asked a few other questions, and then she ended up speaking for like 20 minutes about all the great things she did at this job. She just didn't like, it wasn't her favorite job. And so when she thinks about it, she doesn't think about the cool things she did. She just kind of thinks about all that time, when I was at that job. And so it's always interesting to see the accomplishments that come out. And then those accomplishments that you can see that you put on your resume are typically stories that you're going to want to use in your interview. So it doesn't have to be like, I really encourage people to be themselves. I think that's the best way to approach an interview. I don't think that you should come at it and be like, I need to stick with my personal brand and be less authentic. I think it's more important to be yourself than to worry too much about that, because then you'll really see if you fit in with their culture. The manager will see if they feel like you are a fit for them, and you'll get more jobs that'll be more of a fit for your personality. But the
Yeah.
big thing to think about is just like, what I encourage people when they're thinking about their interviewing is to think about 5 to 10 stories that you would want to share in an interview that happened throughout your career. So, like, without thinking of any interview questions, what are 5 to 10 stories that are like great things that either you've done, or, conflicts that you've solved, or, times when you just really feel like this story would be an impactful share. And what
Yeah.
you'll find is when you create those stories, um, you'll find that they actually answer multiple interview questions. Like what I like often, someone was talking about how she helped solve a conflict within her team. And
Mhm.
you that could be like problem solving, that could be solving conflict between coworkers, that could be leadership. Like there's just so many competencies that one story could speak to. And so when you're able to prepare these stories, you just come into your interview way better prepared than when you don't have them ready.
Yeah, and I feel like it also kind of naturally makes the interview a little more natural. Like I had one recently where I was telling stories, and the guy, like halfway through the interview, he looked down at his paper and was like, "So I think we've covered all the things I was supposed to talk to you about," and it allowed the
Yeah.
conversation just to kind of flow beyond that into we kind of covered all the corporate stuff. And it's like, okay, yeah, cultural fit. I kind of got all that stuff. Now let's talk about all the really cool, exciting things. And you're right, having those stories prepared then allowed me to tell even more stories that
hmm
allowed me to show myself even stronger, which
Right.
is, I think, another side effect of already knowing those stories, because it's not necessarily like a call and response anymore. It turns more into a conversation, and because you have those stories and you're controlling the conversation, then you get to kind of control your branding message throughout the whole thing as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you so much for watching this segment of the Engineering Success Podcast. If you liked it, make sure to check out the other videos down below that are recommended to you. And if you really like the podcast, make sure to subscribe right down there in the middle. We really appreciate it. It's free to you and helps us a lot out. And last but not least, the best way to help the show grow is to comment down below. So leave your comment if you have any thoughts about this segment. Thanks.
I ain't chasing payments, still playing in the basement while I'm working on arrangements. They heard the kid in 50 countries, thank God that's amazing. But I'd rather thank Spotify, they put me on the station.